So let's go ahead and get started here. My name is Ian Loth. I am the Vice President of Marketing here at Winspire, and I would like to welcome our guest here today, Harry Santaiola, who is the Senior Vice President at Givergy. Welcome.
Thanks, Ian. So yeah, it's Harry Santaiola. You're very close. I've had over the years thousands of people. Yeah, you're as close as I could hope for. So yeah, thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here. And thank you all for joining.
Awesome. Yeah, sorry I don't have the same accent as you. It doesn't come in handy as often as it does for you, I'm sure. So. But it's all good. I'm glad to have you here today. Harry has a lot of great stuff to talk about with regard to their platform at Givergy, how they're collecting data and using it, and same with us here today. So we hope you guys enjoy it. Don't forget to ask questions. We're not going to be addressing questions as they come up, but you have a little questions panel there down at on your little sidebar there. You can ask questions at any point during the webinar, and then we're going to have a Q&A section at the end where we will get to all of your questions. But we're going to get through the content first. Don't forget to tweet us. You can tweet at WinspireMe or at GivergyUS during the webinar or after, and we'd be happy to respond to any questions there. Today we're going to be talking about using data. We're going to start by talking about how to think like a business instead of a nonprofit, surveying your donors, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about splitting your audience into 3 tiers when it comes to donor spending. And then Harry is going to talk a little bit about pledge drives. Did you want to talk about your overview here, Harry?
Sure. So what I'd like to be going through today is basically being more analytical and methodic in your approach to pledge drives to make sure that you're maximizing returns year on year. That includes looking at previous year's data, but not just sort of resting on your laurels there, and then identifying the 2 different types of pledged gifts that are made at any given campaign, and then how best to utilize event statistics the night of your event to maximize your return.
I love it. Yeah, and I love what you just said about being a little bit more analytical and methodic, and that's a big theme that we're going to be talking about here today. Harry, tell us a little bit about Givergy before we get started.
Yeah, so Givergy is globally recognized as the leading technology provider for non-for-profits. We now have 9 offices globally around the world, a few here in the US and Canada. Our hub or sort of HQ is London, foggy London town, which is where I am originally from, and I sort of hopped the pond over here a couple of years ago to the land of the free and home of the brave to help sort of spread the good word. So in the last sort of 12 months, we've helped over 1,500 events, over 1,200 clients, and raised in excess of $55 million. And that is through the technology itself via silent auctions. Initially, that's how it was launched, but actually, certainly here in North America, we found that our pledge platform is becoming increasingly popular, and that's why I want to focus on pledging and utilizing statistics today.
Great. Awesome. Thanks for that. And then as far as Winspire is concerned, for those of you out there who are not familiar with Winspire, what we do is we put together incredible travel packages for you to use in your live and silent auction for no risk. So it's consignment travel. You don't pay anything to use it, and you purchase it after the event, only after it's helped you raise money, and then we take care of your donors and send them on these fabulous vacations. And so far, we've raised over $48 million for nonprofit causes since we started in 2008. Just under 10 years ago. We've been supported over 31,000 events globally, mostly here in North America, but we are looking at over the pond over there in the UK as well. And then we've booked over 70,000 satisfied winning bidders. So very busy in the travel industry, but our main focus is helping you nonprofits out there raise some money. So I thought before we get started today, I always like to have a little bit of interaction, see what our audience out there says. We have 2 poll questions that we're going to hit you with today, just to kind of see what you guys are up to right now. The first one we always like to ask is kind of general question: how do you raise money at your events? So what I'm going to do is launch this poll. You're going to see it on your screen. The answers are live auction, silent auction, pledge drive, fund a need, raffle, and sponsorships. And I may or may not have, this was supposed to be one where you could select all of them, but I think I might have made it. So let's just do, what is the biggest money maker for you at your event? Is it the live auction, the silent auction, the fund a need, the raffle, or sponsorships? What is the biggest money maker for you out there? We got a lot of people who voted. About half of you had voted. We're going to close it here. Biggest money maker. All right, I'm going to close the polls, share results, and it looks like the biggest money maker for you guys out there is going to be those that sponsorships, which is very interesting, actually. I would have thought it's the live auction. Do you have any response to this, Harry?
Well, I'm actually, yeah, and obviously I would need to get an understanding of who's actually behind the stats here, but which organizations. I do know that sponsorship is a huge part of many organizations, and it's also great because it's reliable income pre-event very often. I'm disappointed to see that the pledge drive is only 11%, but
yeah.
excited to see it as well, because I know that we can significantly increase that if we're again methodic about our approach to these pledge drives. They should always be bringing in more than your silent auction. So the fact that it's at half the percent, at half the percent is disappointing, but something we can work on. So let's do that.
And same with the live auction. I think the live auction and the pledge drive, it's the most successful events I've been to. It's the live auction and the pledge drive or fund a need, because those usually happen in conjunction, right? One with the other. It's usually the point of the night where it's the climax. It's where people end up submitting the most money, whereas the silent auction, it's these items that, they'll bring in a few $100s per item, maybe $1,000, but it's these big giant gifts. If you are using data, right, to understand your audience better, the live auction and pledge drive should be the biggest money makers there. So some really interesting things there. We'll talk about it a little bit more as we move forward. Second question for you people out there. How do you collect and store your donor spending data? Really interested to hear what you guys think about this. So I'm going to launch the poll. How do you collect your donor spending data? Is it mobile bidding technology, an example being Givergy or some of the other vendors out there? Good old-fashioned paper bid sheets? Do you store it in a single Excel document? Do you do it in Google Sheets, like a collaborative spreadsheet, or do you use donor management software, Blackbaud, Donor Perfect, those sorts of things? Getting some encouraging results here. Have about half you voted. I'm going to give you about 5 more seconds. 3, 2, 1, and close. All right, let's share the results. Awesome. So this is actually really encouraging for me. Thrilled to hear that you guys are using donation or donor management software out there, because that is the best way that you're going to be able to really use the data that you have to really improve your results. Any thoughts here, Harry?
Yeah, no, that's more in line with what I was expecting and hoping. I do think we are in this day and age moving towards the technology side of things. So, but of course there are still going to be those a handful of people who are using the good old-fashioned paper bid sheets as well. But that's absolutely fine by me.
Great, I like it. Awesome, guys. Let's keep moving here. Let me see. Hold on. Awesome. Oops. Get us moving. All right, great. So thanks for that, guys. Let's get started here on the main content of the webinar. So how to use data to get the most out of your fundraising event. And what I wanted to start with is something that if you guys have been on a webinar here, one of my webinars here before, you've heard me say it. And that is to think more like a business than a charity, right? You want to become data-driven. Businesses out there, for-profit companies use data to the max. They are out there crunching data, getting customer data, getting purchasing history, getting all these data points, and they're using that to make decisions. And that's, in terms of a business that's, a smooth run operation that is focused on profits, that's what you should be doing, especially with the event that you're running. You want to think about your event in terms of how business thinks, and that's in terms of profit, right? It's not so much about donations, it's about increasing your revenue, decreasing your expenses, and increasing your profit in that one night, right? One metaphor that we always like to use here is this idea of a one-night only storefront, right? You have this one storefront that you're creating for one night out of the year where you have all these products on the shelves, you have kind of various fundraising methods, income streams, and you're going to open those doors for one night, have all your customers come in, clear out the shelves, and then leave and not come back until next year, right? If you were to run a business like that, it'd be very difficult, halfway impossible, but that's ultimately what you are tasked with doing, right, as the event coordinator. So in order to make sure that you are doing it to the best of your ability, you want to make sure that you use all the data that you can to really streamline that process of donors, bidding on items, pledging during the pledge drive or fund a need, and raising their hand, to participate. So thinking about it as a one-night only storefront is a great way to get started when you start thinking about data. And when we talk about data, we're typically talking about data about your donors, right? The people who are going to come in and spend money. There's various types of data that you can talk about. Demographic data, spending data, purchasing history. Those are all things, people who spend more money in the pledge drive versus more money in the silent auction versus more money in the live auction. Those data points are really important to understand and break down so that you can start catering your offerings to those people and raising more money in those avenues. So where to get started? Well, I'm glad to hear that most of you use donor management software. If you don't, it's not the end of the world. It's, you may not be big enough for it, but it's definitely something to look at. But you should be collecting this data one way or another because your donors can ultimately tell you a lot. So one great place to start is by surveying your donors, and that's something that we actually do a lot here at Winspire. So we have a bunch of winning bidders, which are your donors, right, that come on our trips, and we survey each and every one of them to make sure that not only that they had a great experience, but also to find out a little bit about their purchasing patterns and how many events they attend, and just so we have a better understanding of the people that we're trying to sell the experiences to as well. We want them to be very attractive to them, your winning bidders. So I just thought I'd share some of the stats that we've found over the years, from those 70,000 winning bidders that we've sent on experiences, some things that you guys might be able to use here. So number of events attended each year. A vast majority of your donors, 76%, attend over 3 events per year, right? What does that tell us? That means that the competition's pretty high out there. People who are active in the nonprofit space are ultimately going to be out there participating in many events. So you want to make sure that the items that you're offering are unique. You want to make sure the experience is a lot of fun, and you want to just really be conscious of that when you're hitting them up for donations throughout the year. That was a cool statistic. In terms of travel, 2 out of 3 donors take 3 or more trips per year. Half of the donors that we've surveyed take 4 more trips per year. So these are people who travel a lot. They're typically people with money from affluent backgrounds, right? So they take a lot of vacations. We found that 15% actually take 6 or more trips per year, which is huge. I personally would love to be part of this statistic, but I'm not. I do not take 6 trips a year, but it'd be nice to be one of those folks, right? But what this tells us is that travel is going to be a really great item to put in your auction, whether it's procured or gotten from a consignment company like Winspire. Travel packages are always going to be popular. You never know if people need a TV or if they need, jewelry or a car. Those kinds of things are kind of one-off items, but travel, no matter what it is, you have a very wide array of options when it comes to procurement or, purchasing from a consignment company in terms of the items you can use. So travel is going to be a very popular item. Travel budgets, right? This has to do with the amount of money that people set aside for travel each year. 83% of donors set aside at least $5,000. That's enough to donate for a good travel package there during an event. 52%. This was crazy that we thought over half of donors budget at least $10,000 each year for vacation travel. That's money they should be purchasing travel packages from your event and helping you raise money. So these are really cool statistics that we've found just from surveying our donors. And there's a lot of ways that you guys out there can survey your donors, right? You can use that SurveyMonkey, which is a free service that you can that we actually use to collect our data. You can use social media, right? Here's an example of a free poll that I published on an example Facebook page that just allows you to say, hey, where do you want to go? You can start to collect data from your donors as far as like where do they want to travel to, and then start catering your auction item offering to that. You can do this on all the platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter. Nowadays you have so many avenues to connect with your donors, and each of those should be used to start collecting data on them. So in terms of which auction items they want, find out where they want to go, find out what they want. You can offer auction item sneak peeks. Just a great tool for collecting data. Now, this is a really meaty part. This is the part that I was really excited to talk about, and this has to do with splitting your audience into 3 tiers. When you look at your audience, right, from previous events or the attendee list that's coming up, you should be able to split your audience up based on their spending level. So if you haven't yet, you definitely want to, at your next event, keep track of each donor and how much they spend at their event, how much they spend in a raffle, how much they spend, in the silent auction, in a live auction, or at the pledge drive. And that's where, mobile bidding technology like Givergy is going to really come in handy, is starting to collect that data for you and keep it easy, because managing a bunch of stacks of paper and bid sheets is going to be difficult. But if that's what you're doing, I still encourage you to put that all into an Excel sheet and keep track of these donors' spending habits, because then you're going to start to be able to make informed decisions in terms of what auction items you're going to be offering them. And then you can start to raise a lot more money during the live auction and then also during the pledge drive, because you'll know how much money to ask for. So this is what we've come up with in terms of our recommendation for how to split up your audience, right? You have your top tier spenders, which is the top 5% of spenders. You have your middle spenders, which is that middle 20%, and then you have your bottom minimum participants. It's usually 75% of the audience. These are really easy people to find. These are the people who are going to just participate in the raffle. They bought tickets, and they're just going to be in the silent auction. The live auction and pledge drive, that should be the main focus of the top tier and middle spenders, that top 25%. That's where you're going to make the most money during your live auction and pledge drives if you focus on those people. So how does this work? So let's say we have a spreadsheet here. Here's an example of a spreadsheet of donors, right? And usually you want to split donors into buying units. So each one of these donors would actually be typically a couple, right? Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Mr. and Mrs. Martin, and that buying unit is usually one wallet, right? So that you want to combine those donors and then start ordering them in terms of total event spend the previous year, the last couple events, right? That's a good way to start ordering these donors. Once you have this list set up, then you can start to break it up and figure out who are your top spenders. I've broken this list up. These are just made up names. Don't worry about it, not real people and real numbers. And these numbers can vary based on the size of your event. This could be a much smaller list with smaller total spends, or it could be a much bigger list, right? You can add zeros onto each one of these line items and have it applied the same way, right? But you split up your list into that top tier, middle tier, and minimum participants. And those top tier spenders is where you're going to really want to focus those, those top auction items for your live auction, right? We typically recommend 7 to 12 live auction items, right? Because that's usually about how many auction items you can sell in about an hour, right? So you want, for those top 4 or 5 or even 10 top tier spenders, you want to focus, 3 to 4 big bang live auction items for those people. The kind of auction items that are going to be upwards of $10,000, $15,000, right? Those are the people that you want to really wow them with these incredible experiences, whether it's consignment or donated. That's, the best is if you can get a really big one donated. But, realistically, it can be kind of difficult when you're talking about these huge things. But that's where you start to rely on your procurement team to go out and find some really cool auction items. Then, right, for those other 6 to 7 auction items, right, you have those 3 to 5 really just top-notch auction items. Then there's the middle tier, right, and that's where you have your, your $3,000 to $6,000 range for auction items. That's for your middle tier spenders. That's where they're going to come to the event, and they're not going to bat an eye at buying a $5,000 to $6,000 travel package. And hopefully you can sell several of those, and that's where you really start to rack up those fundraising dollars. So just the main thing here is to really find out who those top tier and middle tier spenders are, and then cater your live auction offering to those people. Contact each and every one of them. Find out where they want to go. What's on their bucket list, right? What is something that they would just love to spend money on at an auction? And then you want to make sure that you have multiple people who are kind of interested in the same thing, so you can get that bidding war started amongst your top tier and middle tier spenders. Again, this list is not an exact science here, right? It can totally vary based on the size of your event, the scope of how much your donors are spending. So this list can grow, it can shrink, totally depending on your audience size. This right here only shows about 50 or 60 people, right? So, ideally for those events out there that have 200 or 300 people, this list will double, triple in size, right? So you have a big chunk of top tier spenders that you can really cater to, and then you have the rest of your audience, the middle tier spenders that you can cater the rest of your live auction offering. Just real quick on travel packages for that middle tier, I thought I'd highlight some of our more popular ones that we use for targeting that middle tier, right? Anywhere from that $3,000 to $4,000 nonprofit price. This is your nonprofit price, so this is where you start at, and then you typically start the bidding about 20% above. So if it's a $33,000 package, you start at $3,600 and go up from there. And hopefully you get the bidding up for a while, then you sell it multiple times to the top 2 or 3 bidders. That's really how you start making some good money in your live auction. Del Mar Racetrack Experience. This is supremely popular, right? We can fly you from anywhere in the country out to Southern California, Winter Circle, down to the Del Mar Racetrack down in San Diego, right on the water. It's absolutely gorgeous. Sonoma Wine and Dine, anything in Napa Valley or Sonoma is going to sell really well. So this is definitely one of our more popular packages. It's new with the with Jesse Katz, which is an incredible chef and winemaker up in Napa Valley, and then also Andrea Bocelli in concert. We just added this one, already getting this one into auctions that we're really excited about. Just a fabulous option for, especially for the demographic out there that we're trying to focus on. So these middle tier packages is where you want to focus, for that middle 20% of your audience. Now, as I mentioned before, what if you don't have data? Well, now's the time to start collecting it, right? You can use things like Givergy to really start collecting donor data, spending data. Go back, if you save your bid sheets, if you have old auction binders with old data on their spending habits, start putting it into Excel. And if you haven't used Google Sheets or any sort of collaborative spreadsheet software, I highly recommend it. That is if you don't use a CRM. Those are going to be the first place you should start if you have that. But Google Sheets is a great place to all store information centrally so that multiple people can collaborate on one spreadsheet. It's just a great way to all share information. So that's my recommendation. If you haven't started collecting it, start there. But hopefully eventually you can make your way to a full CRM, like Blackbaud or Donor Perfect. Great. And with that, I'll let you take it, Harry.
Sorry, I just realized I was on mute. So just jibber-jabbering away to myself, and hundreds of people are sort of waiting. Thank you. Yeah, that was all, really interesting stuff. And what I really liked about that was your approach of, I believe it was sort of one of the earlier slides of, look at this as a business. We need to see this event or campaign, as some people like to sort of describe it, a fundraising campaign or event, as a business. There are many sort of revenue streams, and just like a business, you've got various revenue streams, sort of live auction, silent auction, pledge drive, sponsorship, clearly, which is a popular one. You've got your fixed costs of your staffing and venue, that sort of stuff. You've got your variable costs. And basically our bottom, the bottom line is what really matters. And so that sort of methodic, statistical, and analytical approach is absolutely our bread and butter here at Givergy. And for me personally, as a fundraising consultant, it's something I really, really pride myself on, is really making the most of digesting that data, because I think it is absolutely invaluable. So this section will be about how to utilize that data. And we're going to focus it on the pledge drive, which, as I said, is very, very popular over here in the US. And statistically speaking, significantly more is invested by your audience via the pledge than anywhere else in the world.
And just to be clear, the pledge drive is synonymous with the fund and need, cash appeal, paddle raise. It's all the same thing, just a different name, correct?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, there are reverse
for cash. Yeah.
Exactly. So over here you've got sort of various names. You've got sort of, fund and need, reverse auction. I've heard it being called a Dutch auction. I'm not entirely sure why, but yeah, it's a pledge drive. We're basically asking the audience to get involved and to part with some cash. And one of the big focuses, which I'll talk about later on, is dividing your audience into two very clear, very succinct categories. And one are the emotional pledges, and the second are what I call the transactional pledges. So those are the people who aren't necessarily emotionally tied in or vested with the organization, but should be parting ways with some level of pledge at some stage throughout the evening, just, if anything, to say thank you for the night. And so that's the goal. The bottom line is, A, utilizing the data from previous years, and statistically speaking, trying to improve on that. But B, the bottom line is just getting participation up. And I'm sure there are many of you out there right now who are event planners and fundraising experts who, are probably, nodding your head right now in understanding the fact that one of the biggest challenges we face as fundraisers is getting people who haven't even invested to have a ticket at the event, getting them to part ways with some cash. So those are the guests of those who have invested in those tickets and tables. Right. So if you could move on to the next slide for me. Great. So what we're talking about here is analysis. So like I mentioned earlier, one of the keys to a successful pledge drive or Dutch auction or reverse auction or however we want to call it is getting the whole audience bought into this idea that they are participating in a moment that is really important to the organization. So I was disappointed earlier to see that only 11% of the poll utilize their pledge drive as one of the, as the biggest fundraising drive, because, a lot of the big names that I work with over here in the US, and we at Givergy support here in the US, the likes of Human Rights Watch, Charity Water, Save the Children, cancer research, they all utilize, very often the pledge drive will be the biggest moment of their fundraising campaign. They're not actually asking anyone to purchase anything, they're just asking everyone to give as and when they can. And those are at various increments, and those increments depend on which category each guest falls into, the emotional side or the transactional side. So the goal is to set out this idea, this challenge that, at this stage for the next 8 to 12 minutes with our fund and need, we are now challenging the audience to raise X amount of revenue, and that X amount is based on the stats that we've had on previous years and we've analyzed from previous years. And hopefully, there's an ambitious goal there, something that is fair and reasonable to ask of your audience, but that ambitious goal should be verified on the fact that actually in the last few years you may have raised 80,000 or 70,000 through your pledge drive. This year, let's challenge them to raise 90 or 100,000. And the way we do it is by, not just capitalizing on those who pledged last year, but getting an increase of 20% participation during the pledge drive as well. So that's all part of the pre-event planning and the sort of statistical, methodic approach that I mentioned earlier to the fundraising process for the pledge drive. So with that, if we can go on to the next slide. This for me is the absolute key, this idea that this concept that we've sort of really identified here at Givergy, that there are two types of people who are going to give in the evening. And again, the reality is one of the hardest things I find as a fundraising consultant is actually, you know, forcing or sort of encouraging my clients to really come to terms with the fact that they cannot expect the same level of emotional investment that they make towards their organization. They can't expect that same level of investment from their audience. So very often the mistake made by organizations will be that during their pledge drive, their big focus is the sort of heartstring moment where they're sort of, you know, there's an emotional video or a plea from a board member or a chairman or even someone who's benefited from the organization's great work. And that is very, very appealing to the emotional category. So you've got this emotional versus transactional categories. The emotional category is about 20%, typically about 20% of the audience. And those are the people who have actually invested in the tables. They may even be sponsors. They are the people who have encouraged others to purchase tables. They are the people who have, you know, to some degree or another, had some level of interaction with the organization over the years in helping the fundraising. Now, realistically, statistically speaking, they're going to give anyway. So we are actually wasting a lot of our time, energy, and resources in focusing on them because that emotional appeal is already done. Your good work is already done because they're already behind you. So of course we want them to give on the night, and we will do so. And Givergy is a great platform at, you know, making that transaction fun and engaging. But actually, the real value add of a successful pledge drive is in the other category, the transactional people. So those transactional pledges are made by people who typically are not emotionally vested in the organization. They are that 70 to 80% of the audience who are guests. You know, very often each table will be purchased by someone or an organization, and the 9 other people are guests. And, you know, you can't expect them to have the same level of commitment to the organization that that their table host has, and certainly not the same level of commitment that you have as event planners and professional fundraisers. Because the reality is, you know, the clients we work with and that I work with day to day, you know, you go into the non-for-profit fundraising world because you are an empathetic character. That's the type of person you are, and it's very admirable that you work so hard for these incredible organizations, but you unfortunately have to expect the worst of your audience. They are not necessarily in the same category as you. So the emotional appeal isn't actually going to be as successful financially. What we need to do is make it clear to them that a transaction this evening is all we're looking for. So going back to that initial slide of challenging the room to come together collectively, you know, i.e. we're looking for 100% participation, and we understand that all of you have different levels of dispensable income, and all of you are you know, going to come in at different increments. But what we do hope is that everyone enjoys the process of giving something, and that is where the big sort of difference is for the transactional people. So whoever it is that's driving it on stage, part of their role is to make it clear to the audience that, you know, there may well be many of you here who were invited this week. You know, some of you might have even been sort of invited this morning. You might be an intern. And your boss was unfortunately unwell, and you're sort of there, you know, representing the organization. That's absolutely fine. We don't even expect you to visit our website tomorrow, but what we do expect you is to give something to say thank you. So that for me is sort of a big part of a successful pledge drive, is making sure we're making the most out of the emotional side, that 20%, and then the transactional side, you know, which is obviously much lower levels of gifts, but a much higher volume of them. But bringing them all together and turning it into a massive sort of feel-good moment whereby the whole room does their bit to hit that target, which is fair and reasonable of the audience based on the stats that we've gone through prior to the event, and making sure that that stat and that challenge is above last year, but is fair and reasonable of the audience. So if we can just squeeze on to the next slide as well. So how do we go about doing that? Okay, so we've talked about, you know, the various types of gifts, the emotional side, and then the you know, the transactional side, but utilizing your technology the night of. And you know, I don't want this to feel too much of a plug of Givergy, but this really is where we are at our absolute best, and where a lot of these organizations make the most of the system. Utilizing leaderboards, for me, making it fun and engaging and exciting for the audience to come in and part ways with some level of cash, no matter what level it is. Making them feel part of it and engaging them is key. So having leaderboards around the room, broadcasting how much has been raised so far is typical, and that's something we love to do. But we also have a way of creating leaderboards. So that's something I actually drive a lot of these pledges myself on stage, and I like to have these leaderboards that we build at Givergy that identify the top spending tables, or if that's a little bit crude, maybe the most active tables. So, you know, number of pledges per table is a really useful stat. I like to use what percentage of the audience is given. So if, you know, you might be sort of 10 grand off your target and only 67% of the audience is given, which is an amazing stat, because you can get up there and say, ladies and gentlemen, you know, we're only 10 grand off our target, and the better news is there's still 33% of you still to give. So that's, you know, some really useful stuff that you can utilize from these leaderboards, and also turning them into bespoke leaderboards. So a lot of the top organizations, well, actually a lot of the organizations, not just the top ones, will have bespoke customized designs built, so that it is that sort of it's even more impressive and engaging and exciting to see. So it might be sort of you know, for example, Charity Water had a number of images filling up with color as and when they got closer to their goal, and as and when people's names are flashing up on the screens, they were attaching to these various images. But there's hundreds of types of designs you can have, but making it engaging and exciting is really, really important. Another way is creating incentives. So these can be really, really simple things. And again, it's all about audience participation. It can be as simple as what, say, the children did, or Young People's Chorus did the other day, whereby they said that the first 3 tables that had 100% participation, not necessarily saying, you know, the first table to raise $10,000, but 100% participation, the first 3 tables will receive a magnum of Laurent Perrier Rosé. So they were the event sponsors, and very easy to part with 3 magnums. But what that did was it encouraged tables to get 100% participation. And then the bottom line is, you know, getting the right MC on the stage. And unfortunately, again, this is a really honest and frank way of putting it, but very often organizations get this wrong. For me, the pledge drive is not an appeal from a chairman or a board member or someone from the organization. That, you know, that's not where the art should come from. It should really come from a professional who knows how to tap into the sort of fun and engaging nature of a pledge drive. But more importantly, they're not coming from the organization's perspective. That looks too much like a beg. Having an MC that's fun and engaging on the stage, but is also very clear to the audience that, you know, in a tasteful way, just very clear, making it clear to them that, you know, no matter what, you know, you cannot leave this evening having spent less than you would at McDonald's, because that's the bottom line, right? You know, there's going to be hundreds of people in the room who are there essentially free of charge. One of the first things I like to do actually on stage is give a round of applause to the table host. So the first thing I'll say is, you know, a quick round of applause to all the table hosts, because, you know, realistically, if they weren't willing to buy these tables, these events wouldn't happen. And once you've got the hundreds of people, you know, clapping and all the rest of it, at that point I'll often turn it on them and say, right, if you're clapping right now, then like me, you're on a free ride. So it's our job right now to sort of pick up these tablets and let's part ways with some cash. And you know, if we all do our bit, we're going to hit our target nice and easy. And the bottom line is that helps coming from someone who's not actually linked to the organization, because it puts you in the same shoes as the audience. Does that, and hopefully that sort of makes sense to people. So for me, I mean, just to sort of summarize all of that, and you know, I hope it all sort of makes sense to everyone, and I'm sure many of you out there who are sort of fundraisers do identify with this you know, age-old problem that fundraisers face of how do we get, you know, a significant percentage of the audience to give when a lot of them are arriving free of charge and leave having spent nothing. For me, it is that fund a need moment. It is that pledge moment, uniting the room, making it clear that, you know, we're not expecting thousands from everyone, but we do expect something. And even if it's just to say thank you for your table host, and you don't even visit our website tomorrow, you know what, that's absolutely fine. Because even if you've just parted with $50 or $25 or $100, you'll have done your bit to increase that sort of audience participation percentage. So that's pretty much everything from me from a pledge perspective. I would be very happy to answer any questions that anyone has afterwards, and I believe there's probably going to be a bit of a Q&A now. But it's definitely an area that we at Givergy are very passionate about, and we have a huge amount of success in that sort of pledge drive area, and a lot of it is built around statistics. You know, a lot of it is built around, you know, keeping things very simple, but utilizing data and being methodical in our approach to fundraising.
Love it. Great. Lots of information there. Yeah, just some great insight. I hope you people out there can definitely use some of that. Harry definitely has some experience with the pledge drive. In my conversations with him, he's been telling me about his experience actually getting up on stage and driving some of these pledge drives. So definitely coming from some experience there. If you guys have any questions, now is the time to ask them. Feel free to, you know, submit your question in the questions pane. For those of you who are asking about whether you can listen to this webinar later or view it, we're going to be sending out a recording maybe this afternoon or early tomorrow morning. So yes, you can absolutely listen to this at a later date. And sorry, I see Michael Gulick here. He was explaining his answer to the poll question. Sorry that the question was a little bit misleading, but he was saying that he does in fact use the pledge drive, but selected sponsorships for the most money raised prior to the event. But I mean, I think the theme here is that I really hope that everyone out there is using, you know, the data that they've collected from their donors to really strategize during the pledge drive or fund a need, and how they procure and sell their live auction items during the event. So if there's any other questions, go ahead and submit them now. One coming in from Claudia. How should we start the pledge drive? With the highest quantities or lowest? Why? What do you think, Harry?
Well, that's a good question, and it gets asked quite a bit. For me, I've probably done maybe 20 drives in the last 2 months, 2 or 3 months, and always gone from the top down. And the reason why is because what I like to do is, you know, you start at those top level increments because quite rightly it's worth giving a sort of a shout out to those 1 or 2 people who are coming in at the 25 grand range or the 10,000 grand range. You know, all that is great, and you can then work your way down to 5 and then 2,500, 1,500, however you want to. The reason why I like to do it that way is because the final increment, you know, that's more or less, if we're doing a reverse auction, it's more or less when you deliver that sort of power punch right at the end of, right, before I go into the final increment, what I actually would like to do is, you know, get that round of applause going for all of those table hosts who have got involved tonight in purchasing tables to ensure that this event actually happens. So if like me, you're a guest this evening, can you put your hands together for your table host to say thank you? And then again, I flip it around onto them and say, well, look, if you're clapping now, it means you're on a free ride, and which is fine because you can actually get involved with this final increment, and that final increment is pledging any amount. And again, usually we're utilizing the Givergy technology, and that pledge any amount is the bottom increment on the pledge platform, and I'll guide people to that. If you're willing and able to give something just to say thank you, please do give generously at this stage. And for me, I think that is the best approach. A different alternative that you can do, but probably one of the most aggressive ways of fundraising, and I'm not sure how tasteful it is, but I have done it once, which is where you go the other way and you start from $100 and you get everyone to stand up who's willing to give $100. And if you are willing to part with $500, then please remain standing, and then people sort of sit down, and up to 1,000, then 10,000, then slowly, obviously, you're left with a handful of people who are right at that top level. But again, it's quite an aggressive way of going about it. I much prefer the top-down approach.
Very good. That's great. Next question is from Lisa Vecchio. How does the totalizer work? Is this something most people use? What is the totalizer? I guess I'm unfamiliar with it.
Sure. So the totalizer is what we is what we at Givergy sort of describe those screens around the room, letting everyone know how much has been raised. So those the totalizer is something that, again, it ties the whole room together, lets everyone know how much has been raised so far. So maybe let's just keep it round. Let's say that the target is $100,000. The totalizer will be letting everyone know how much has been raised, numerically, but more importantly for me as an MC and someone who enjoys that process of sort of challenging the room to participate, we also utilize stats like percentage of audience participation, the most active tables, and even how much has been raised per table, and those are all featured in those sort of totalizers and leaderboards. So yeah, that's what I'm referring to when I'm talking about the totalizer.
Got it. And I think absolutely, if you have the capability of displaying, how much people are donating, live or as it's happening, that's always good. If you don't use bidding technology, and you use bid cards for some reason, or I think that's still a pretty common occurrence, but having those big cards and announcing, those live so people get acknowledged. The biggest thing here is acknowledgement of the people who are donating. People want to be recognized for their pledge. So,
sure.
However you do that, it's just really important that it's done well and clearly.
Ian, if you could just go back on your slides, if you just go back to that one there, right there, you can see that is an example of a totalizer. So that's what Human Rights Watch use globally, here in the US, in Canada, in Europe, all over the world. That they have a very specific sort of design brief, but that's what they use. If you can imagine those big screens around the room, you can see on the right there's a thank you to all those that have donated, and on the left, very simply, they've got the human rights logo filling up with a total raised above it. Now, typically, they'll also have a target up at the top of the screen as well. So New York target, $500,000. London target, £250,000. And that's a very basic sort of setup. And it's basically giving recognition to those that are given, but also as and when people are making pledges, their names will be flashing up on the screen, and then it adds to that thank you column. So hopefully that sort of clears things up a little.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, if anyone else has any questions, now's the time to submit them. You can see we put our contact information there on the screen. You can email myself at iloth@winspireme.com, or give me a call at the number listed. Same with Harry. He has his email and contact information there. I believe he has a website for your pledge activities that you do. Is that right, Harry?
Yeah, so that's just a basic website for the on-stage support I give, and more often than not, I will be hopefully utilizing the Givergy platform to get the most out of that pledge moment.
Awesome. Well, great. Well, I just want to say thank you, Harry, for joining us today and sharing with us your knowledge. It's always a pleasure. And for those of you out there who joined us today, thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you all for joining, and thanks, Ian, for inviting me onto this conference.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much. We'll see you around.
Cheers. Bye-bye.